Civil War soldiers were more likely to die from diarrhea than from bullets. No, really. The disease killed 44,000 Union soldiers. That's the equivalent of 10 entire Gettysburg battles, and that was just one of the many diseases they faced. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, tonight it's the American Civil War, but before we go anywhere, get comfortable. Like, actually comfortable. Pillows good? Blanket situation handled? Perfect. Trust me on this one. Your eyes open to early morning light filtering through canvas. April 1863, Union Army, somewhere in Pennsylvania. First thing you notice is the straw poking through your thin blanket, jabbing into your back like tiny daggers. The wool blanket you're wrapped in scratches your skin and smells like wet dog mixed with sweat, not like your plush mattress at home. What pulls you fully awake is the sound, a bugle blaring reveille, hundreds of men coughing, someone nearby groaning with stomach cramps. That's becoming a familiar sound in camp, too familiar. Get up, Fletcher captain's coming through. You're Thomas Fletcher, 16 years old, though your enlistment papers say 18. You've been in the Union Army for exactly 3 weeks, and every morning you wake up wondering what the hell you were thinking. Back on your family's farm in western Pennsylvania, this time of morning meant feeding animals and helping Ma with breakfast. Now it means rushing to get dressed before the officers come through, trying to find clean water to wash your face, and praying your stomach doesn't betray you like it did yesterday. I swear to God, says your tent mate Wilkins, a factory worker from Philadelphia, if I have to dig another latrine today, I'm deserting. He doesn't mean it, not really, but the sentiment is there. The ground outside is mud. Not regular mud, this special kind of mud made by thousands of men living in close quarters with poor drainage. It's mixed with horse manure, human waste that didn't make it to the latrines, and whatever else has been discarded. And the smell? Jesus. I can't even describe it properly. It was bad. Like gag reflex bad. You'd probably need to breathe through your mouth. You know what's wild? 3 weeks ago, you were so excited to join. You'd heard Lincoln's call for volunteers, listened to the recruiter talk about glory and saving the Union, watched the town celebrate as you and 5 other boys signed up. Your ma cried, but your pa looked proud. Said you were doing what needed doing. Nobody told you about the mud, or the food, or the dysentery. Fletcher uniform inspection in 10 minutes. Get your ass moving. That's Sergeant Miller, former schoolteacher from Boston, seems to enjoy making your life miserable. You stumble out of your tent into the chaos of camp. 15,000 men all doing the same thing at once creates a special kind of madness. The camp stretches for miles, tents arranged in neat rows that somehow still look messy, campfires sending smoke into the morning air, men in various states of dress rushing about. Your stomach growls. Breakfast will be hardtack and salt pork, if you're lucky. Hardtack is basically a brick made of flour that could crack your teeth if you're not careful. Most guys soak it in coffee to soften it up. Problem is, sometimes that reveals the weevils living inside. Extra protein, the veterans joke. You're not laughing yet. Look alive, boys. It's Corporal Jenkins, looking way too chipper for this hour. Word is we're moving out tomorrow, heading south. The words send a jolt through you. South means closer to battle. You enlisted to fight, sure, but the reality of it is starting to sink in. They say Lee's army is on the move, Jenkins continues, lowering his voice like he's sharing state secrets. Could be the big one. William, the quiet farmer's son from Ohio who sleeps on your other side, looks up from lacing his boots. My pa says every battle is the big one until the next one comes along. Smart kid, William, barely older than you, but sometimes seems like he's carrying the wisdom of someone 3 times his age. His hands are permanently stained with dirt from the farm, much like yours. The morning routine is mind-numbing but necessary. Roll call, breakfast, more drilling, cleaning your rifle until you can see your reflection in the metal. You fired it exactly twice during training. Some of the boys had never held a gun before enlisting. "You seen Johnson this morning?" asks Wilkins, chewing on hardtack that makes an audible crunch with each bite. "Infirmary," says William quietly. "Fever got worse in the night." A moment of silence falls between you. 3 men from your company have already died of disease, and you haven't even seen battle yet. The infirmary tent is a place of nightmares, men moaning in pain, the smell of infected wounds and body odour, harried doctors moving from cot to cot with barely a glance at each patient. After breakfast, which is a generous way of describing what you just ate, it's drill time. 2 hours of marching back and forth across a muddy field, practicing formations that supposedly matter in battle. Forward march, right face, about face, load in 9 times, present arms. Your drill instructor is a weather-beaten man named Corporal Haynes who fought in the Mexican War. His voice carries across the field like thunder. "You call that a formation. My dead grandmother could make a straighter line again. The rifle is heavy. That's the thing nobody tells you. The Springfield Model 1861 weighs about 10 pounds, which doesn't sound like much until you're holding it at shoulder arms for an hour. Your muscles burn. Sweat trickles down your back despite the cool spring air. But Haynes keeps pushing. "When you meet Johnny Reb on the battlefield, you'll thank me. Loading your rifle needs to be instinct. You hesitate, you die. You try not to think about the dying part." Mid-morning brings a different kind of drill, bayonet practice, charging at straw dummies tied to posts, stabbing and slashing with a foot-long blade attached to your rifle. The thought of driving this into another human being makes your stomach turn, but you push the feeling down. This is what you signed up for. "Put your weight into it, Fletcher," Haynes barks. "They won't just stand there and let you poke 'em." By noon, your uniform is soaked through with sweat and your hands are blistered. There's a brief respite for a meal that's nearly identical to breakfast, and then it's equipment inspection. The sergeant walks down the line, examining each soldier's kit: rifle, bayonet, cartridge box, cat pouch, haversack, canteen, blanket, roll. Everything must be in place, clean as possible given the circumstances. "Your rifle's filthy, Thompson," he says to the man next to you. "Clean it again." When he reaches you, he pauses. "Boots coming apart, Fletcher. See the quartermaster after this." You glance down. Sure enough, the sole of your right boot is separating from the upper. Great. The quartermaster is notoriously stingy with new equipment. "Stitch it together," he'll probably say. "We're not made of boots." After inspection comes fatigue duty, the Army's term for chores. Today, your squad is assigned to dig new latrines. The old ones are filling up fast and the smell is becoming unbearable even by camp standards. So you spend 2 hours digging trenches in the hard ground, taking turns with worn shovels. "You know what my father told me before I left," says Wilkins, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. "He said, 'Son, in the army, you'll see the best and worst of men.' He didn't mention I'd be smelling the worst too." That gets a laugh from the group. Humour, however crude, is your collective shield against the reality of your situation. By late afternoon, your hands are raw and your back aches, but the new latrines are dug. You head to the creek that runs along the edge of camp to wash up. The water is cold and not particularly clean. Too many men using it upstream, but it's better than nothing. As you're scrubbing dirt from your hands, William appears beside you. "Letter call came while we were digging," he says, holding out an envelope. "This one's for you." Your heart leaps. Mail from home is the most precious thing in camp. You dry your hands on your trousers and take the letter carefully. Your mother's handwriting. You'll save it for tonight, something to look forward to. "Any for you?" you ask William. He shakes his head. "Not today." Dinner is beans and salt pork, with coffee so weak it's practically brown water, but you eat every bite. One thing the army has taught you: never skip a meal. You never know when the next one is coming. As the sun begins to set, an unusual excitement runs through the camp. A travelling photographer has arrived and set up his equipment near the officers' tents. For 25 cents, soldiers can have their portrait taken to send home. Should we do it? Wilkins asks, genuinely excited for the first time in days. You check your meager funds. 25 cents is a lot, nearly half of what you have left from your last pay. But the thought of sending your portrait home to your mother. Let's do it, you decide. The line is long, but you wait patiently. When your turn comes, the photographer, a thin, nervous man with ink-stained fingers, positions you in front of a plain backdrop. Chin up. Look brave, he instructs. You try your best to look like a soldier, not a frightened farm boy. The flash powder ignites with a bright burst and acrid smoke. That's it. In 2 weeks, if you're lucky, your mother will receive a tintype of her son in uniform. As darkness falls, campfires flicker to life across the vast encampment. Your company gathers around one, the familiar faces illuminated by the dancing flames. Someone has a harmonica and plays a mournful rendition of Home Sweet Home that makes your chest tight with longing. Now feels like the right time to read your letter. You carefully open the envelope, preserving it for a reply. Your mother's words leap off the page. News of home, how your father's managing the farm without you, your sister's new baby. You're an uncle now. Questions about whether you're eating enough and staying warm. There's no mention of the war itself, as if by not acknowledging it, she can keep you safe. The letter ends with a pressed wildflower from the meadow behind your house. The sight of it nearly undoes you. Good news? Asks William, noticing your expression. I'm an uncle. You manage, carefully tucking the flower back into the envelope. Around the fire, men share bits of news from their own letters, creating a patchwork map of home across the northern states. Stories of harvests and church socials and town gossips feel like dispatches from another world, but the conversation inevitably turns to tomorrow's march, and what might lie beyond it. My cousin was at Bull Run, says Thompson, poking at the fire with a stick. Said it was pure chaos. Men running in every direction, couldn't tell friend from foe through the smoke. My brother fought at Shiloh, another soldier adds. Said the dead were so thick on the ground you couldn't walk without stepping on somebody. You listen silently, fear coiling in your stomach. These are the stories they don't print in newspapers, that recruiters don't tell wide-eyed boys signing their names. Enough of that talk. Jenkins interrupts. We'll face what comes when it comes. No use borrowing trouble. Wise words, but cold comfort as you return to your tent for the night. The canvas structure seems flimsy protection against what awaits you in the days ahead. You settle onto your bedroll, the straw crackling beneath you. Outside, the sounds of camp gradually quiet, the occasional laugh, a bout of coughing, the distant neigh of horses. Above the tent, through a small gap in the canvas, you can see stars dotting the night sky. The same stars shine over your family's farm, over the Confederate camps somewhere to the south, over a country tearing itself apart. Sleep comes fitfully, as it always does in camp. Your dreams are a confusion of home and war, familiar faces and nameless fears. Tomorrow, you march toward whatever waits beyond the horizon. What you don't know yet is that this relatively comfortable camp life, despite its hardships, will soon seem like luxury. The mud, the poor food, the endless drilling, all of it preparing you for something much worse. But for now, you sleep, rifle within arm's reach, surrounded by men who were strangers 3 weeks ago and now know your snoring patterns. In the morning, the bugle will wake you again and the next chapter of your war will begin. The bugle sounds before dawn, jerking you from what little sleep you manage to get. Outside your tent, the camp is already stirring, an anthill of activity as 15,000 men prepare to march. Rise and shine, princess, Wilkins says, already pulling on his boots. Today's the day we earn our glory. Or our coffins, William mutters, but only you hear him. Breakfast is hardtack and lukewarm coffee. You've learned to pound the hardtack into crumbs and mix it with coffee, creating a grey paste that's easier to swallow than trying to bite the rock-hard biscuit. Tastes like wet cardboard, but it fills the stomach. By first light, you're standing in formation with your company. The morning air is crisp, mist hanging low over the fields. Captain Hayes paces in front of the line, his boots polished despite the mud. He's young for a captain, maybe 25, with a neat moustache and eyes that have already seen too much. "Men," he says, voice carrying across the silent ranks. "We march south today to join the main army, 10 miles at least. Light packs, full canteens. Any man who falls out will answer to me personally. 10 miles doesn't sound too bad. Back home, you'd walk that far, just checking fences." But that was without a 10-pound rifle, 40 rounds of ammunition, a bayonet, canteen, haversack, and everything else the army deems necessary. The regiment moves out with surprising order, each company filing into place on the road. From your position, you can see the column stretching ahead and behind, thousands of men in blue, a giant centipede winding through the countryside. The early sun glints off rifle barrels and brass buttons. Flags snap in the breeze. It would be beautiful if it wasn't terrifying. "You know what's crazy," Wilkins says, as you settle into the marching rhythm. "More people in this column than live in my entire hometown." He's right. It's hard to wrap your head around. All these men from farms and factories and shops across the Union, now moving as one massive organism toward whatever waits ahead. The first hour passes easily enough. The road is decent, spirits are high, and some men even sing as they march. John Brown's body echoes up and down the line. You join in at the chorus, feeling a part of something bigger than yourself. Then the road turns to mud. Recent rains have transformed the route into a brown soup that sucks at your boots with every step. What was a steady march becomes a slog. The singing dies away, replaced by curses and laboured breathing. Your pack straps dig into your shoulders. Each step requires extra effort to pull your foot from the mire. This, Wilkins pants beside you, is bullshit. 2 hours in, and the first men begin to fall out. Not many, mostly the obviously sick or elderly, but enough to notice the gaps forming in the column. An officer on horseback rides alongside, shouting encouragement that sounds more like threats. "Keep moving, any man stopping will face court-martial." By noon, your uniform is soaked with sweat despite the cool spring air. Your feet are screaming, blisters forming where your damp socks rub against poorly fitted boots. The column halts briefly beside a stream, officers allowing 15 minutes to refill canteens and relieve yourselves. You collapse on a patch of grass, legs trembling with fatigue. William sits beside you, face pale beneath a layer of road dust. Neither of you speaks, saving energy for what's ahead. Wilkins, somehow still energetic, drops down beside you and pulls off his boots. "First rule of marching," he says, inspecting his feet. "Take care of these, or you're finished." He produces a small tin of grease from his pocket and begins rubbing it on the raw spots. "Got this from an old Mex War veteran. Sheep fat mixed with beeswax. Stops the rubbing." He offers you the tin. The grease smells rancid, but you apply it gratefully to your own blistered heels. It's disgusting, but feels instantly better. "How far you reckon we've come?" William asks, accepting the tin next. Wilkins squints at the sun. 5-6 miles, maybe. Halfway there, if the captain was telling the truth. The thought isn't comforting. The 15-minute rest ends too quickly. Back on your feet, back in formation, back to putting one foot in front of the other. The road climbs now, winding up a gentle hill that feels like a mountain to your tired legs. As you crest the rise, something new appears ahead. Wagons, dozens of them coming toward the column. Ambulance wagons painted white with red crosses. The column parts to let them pass, and that's when you get your first real look at war. The wagons are packed with wounded men. Some sit upright, bandages around heads or arms, eyes vacant. Others lie flat, moaning with each bump in the road. The worst are ominously still, covered with blankets despite the warm afternoon. "Jesus Christ," Wilkins whispers, his usual humour gone. A soldier in a blood-stained uniform sits at the edge of one wagon, missing an arm below the elbow. His remaining hand clutches a Bible. He makes eye contact with you as the wagon passes, and you see something in his expression that chills you, not pain, but a strange distance, as if he's looking at you from across an unbridgeable chasm. The wagons keep coming. 10, 20, 30. How many men? Hundreds, at least. All headed north, away from wherever you're marching toward. That's the 12th Massachusetts, someone in the ranks says. They got hit bad at Chancellorsville. Chancellorsville. The name means nothing to you now, but soon it will join the growing lexicon of battle names that every soldier knows, places where men died in droves. The column marches on, but the mood has changed. The reality of what awaits has been made flesh in those broken bodies. Conversation dies away. Even the officers ride more quietly. By late afternoon, your world has narrowed to the few feet of road ahead and the endless cycle of placing one foot before the other. Your shoulders burn from the weight of your gear. Your throat is parched despite careful sips from your canteen. Hunger gnaws at your belly. When the order finally comes to make camp, it's like a reprieve from execution. The regiment files off the road into a large meadow, already filling with other units. Tents go up with practiced efficiency, despite exhausted hands. Fires flicker to life as darkness falls. You sit with your company, too tired to even complain, watching the coffee boil in the shared pot. Your feet throb inside your boots, but you're afraid to remove them, not sure you can get them back on over your swollen feet. 10 miles, the captain said. Wilkins groans, lying flat on his back. That was 15 if it was a step. 16, corrects a new voice. You look up to see a lean, weathered soldier standing at the edge of your firelight. He's older, 30 at least, with a sergeant's stripes and a cavalry trooper's unmistakable bow-legged stance. "Saw you boys coming in," he says, squatting down beside your fire. "First big march?" You nod, too tired for words. He chuckles. Gets easier. Sort of. He extends a hand. "Sergeant Michael Reeves, 8th Pennsylvania Cavalry." "You been fighting long?" William asks after introductions. Reeves nods, accepting a cup of coffee from Wilkins. "Since 61. Bull Run, Peninsula Campaign, Antietam, Fredericksburg." He lists the battles like stops on a familiar road. "What's it like?" you hear yourself ask. "The fighting, I mean." Reeves studies you over the rim of his cup. His eyes are green, you notice, but somehow darker than any eyes you've seen. "Ain't like anything they tell you," he says finally. "Ain't glorious, ain't noble. It's loud and it's confusing and it's..." He pauses. "It's men trying to kill each other is what it is." He must see the fear in your faces because his expression softens slightly. "Look, you're in a good outfit. 6th Corps has solid leadership. Stay together, do what your officers tell you, and most of you will make it through. Most, not all." The word hangs in the air. "Any of you boys know how to play poker?" Reeves asks, changing the subject. None of you do, but he teaches you the basics using pebbles for chips. For an hour, you forget your aching feet and the long march ahead as you learn flushes and straights and full houses. Reeves wins most hands, but lets each of you take a victory too. As the game winds down, he becomes reflective. "Been at this 2 years now," he says, shuffling the worn cards with practiced ease. "Seen things I hope you boys never do. But I'll tell you this, it ain't the Rebs you need to fear most out here." "What then?" asks William. "Yourself," Reeves says simply. "Fear will kill you faster than any bullet. Man gets scared enough, he freezes up, or he runs. Either way, he's done for." He deals another hand, then continues. "But there's something worse than fear out here." You wait for him to continue, not sure you want to hear it. "Indifference," he says. "Seen it happen to good men. They stop caring, stop seeing the dead as people, start thinking of everything as just something to get through." He taps the deck. "That's when you lose something you don't get back." The conversation turns somber after that. Reeves bids you good night, promising to look for you when the dance starts, as he puts it. Sleep comes quickly, despite the hard ground. Your body is too exhausted to care about comfort, but sometime in the dead of night you wake suddenly, unsure why. Then you hear it, screaming. Not battle cries or calls for help, but the terrible sound of a man trapped in his own mind. Night terrors, William whispers beside you. My uncle got 'em after the Mex War. Somewhere in the vast encampment, a soldier is reliving horrors in his sleep. The screams eventually stop, but sleep is harder to find afterward. Dawn arrives with the inevitable bugle. Your body protests every movement, muscles stiff from yesterday's march, but there's no choice. The army moves on with or without you. Breakfast is meagre. The supply wagons are running behind, the quartermaster explains. You divide hardtack and share coffee, everyone getting less than they need. As your company forms up, you notice gaps in the ranks. Some men who started yesterday aren't here today, fallen out, sent to the ambulance wagons, or simply disappeared in the night. Desertion is rarely mentioned, but everyone knows it happens. The second day's march begins like the first, but the pace seems slower. Men are already tired, feet already blistered. The road is crowded now with artillery batteries, supply wagons and cavalry scouts moving back and forth along the column. Around mid-morning, a new sound reaches your ears, a distant rumble like summer thunder, but in a cloudless sky. Artillery, says an older private named Davis. Big guns, 15-20 miles south. A murmur passes through the ranks. Battle, somewhere ahead. The abstract suddenly becomes concrete. Your mouth goes dry despite the water in your canteen. The column presses on, the distant bombardment a constant reminder of your destination. The officers look more serious now, conferring in hushed voices as they ride alongside. By noon, new sights appear along the roadside, evidence that the war has passed this way before. A chimney standing alone, the house it belonged to now ashes and blackened timbers, fields trampled by thousands of boots and hooves, an abandoned cannon, its barrel burst from overuse. "Welcome to Virginia, boys," Wilkins says grimly. You're in the South now, enemy territory, though this part has changed hands so many times it's hard to say who it belongs to anymore. The few civilians you see watch from doorways with expressionless faces, neither welcoming nor hostile, just tired. A mile further, you pass something that stops conversations mid-sentence. A tree beside the road, and from one sturdy branch, a noose. It swings empty in the breeze, but the message is clear. Someone died here, whether deserter, spy, or civilian, impossible to say. The march continues through the afternoon, your feet moving automatically now, mind somewhere far away. You think of home, of your mother's cooking, of the soft bed waiting in a farmhouse hundreds of miles north. The distance feels insurmountable. Late in the day, rain begins to fall, a gentle shower at first, then a steady downpour that soaks through your uniform in minutes. Water drips from your cap into your eyes. Your already blistered feet now squish with each step, the wet leather of your boots rubbing raw skin. When camp is finally made, it's in a muddy field already churned by previous regiments. No fires tonight, the wood is too wet, and smoke might give away positions to enemy scouts. Cold rations, eaten in the rain, huddled under whatever shelter you can find. Your tent, pitched hastily in the downpour, leaks from a dozen places. You, Wilkins, and William sit in miserable silence, water pooling around your legs, too wet and tired to even complain. "My sister got married last Sunday," William says suddenly, staring at nothing. "Wrote me about it last month, said she wished I could be there to see it." The random statement hangs in the damp air, a reminder of the normal lives continuing elsewhere, oblivious to your current misery. "My girl's probably walking out with Jimmy Porter by now," Wilkins adds. "Told her not to wait, but she promised she would." You think of your own family, wondering what they're doing at this moment. Sitting down to dinner, perhaps. Your empty chair at the table. Your father saying grace, maybe asking God to watch over his son. "Why'd you join up?" you ask Wilkins, realising you've never discussed it. He's quiet so long, you think he hasn't heard. Finally, "Factory where I worked shut down. Army pays regular, at least." A pause. "You?" The truth is complicated. Patriotism, yes. Adventure, certainly. But mostly because everyone expected it, because saying no seemed harder than saying yes. Seemed like the right thing, is all you say. William nods, as if this makes perfect sense. My older brother died at Antietam, he says softly. Felt like I owed it to him. The rain drums on the canvas above. Somewhere in the vast camp, a harmonica plays a melancholy tune that seems to capture everything you're feeling. Sleep comes in fits and starts, your body too uncomfortable for true rest. Twice you wake to roll away from water dripping directly on your face. Morning arrives grey and drizzly. The march resumes, somehow even more miserable than before. The mud is deeper, the fatigue more profound, the muscles more sore. But something new enters the equation today. Anticipation. The artillery sounds are closer now, no longer distant rumbles but distinct booms that occasionally shake the ground. Cavalry couriers gallop past the column with increasing frequency, carrying dispatches to and from the front. You're close now, close to whatever awaits. Around midday, the column halts more permanently than the usual short breaks. Officers ride back and forth, conferring and pointing. The men use the opportunity to rest, though the air of tension prevents true relaxation. What's happening? William asks, though none of you have answers. An hour passes before Captain Hayes approaches your company. His uniform is mud-splattered, but his voice is steady. We'll be making camp here, he announces. The main Union army is deployed 3 miles ahead. We join them tomorrow morning. The news sweeps through the ranks like wildfire. Tomorrow you might see battle. As tents are raised and fires lit, rumours fly faster than cavalry scouts. The Confederate army is just beyond that ridge. No, they're retreating toward Richmond. Lee himself is commanding the Southern forces. No, he's miles away. The fighting will be minimal. No, it will be the biggest battle of the war. In this storm of speculation, Sergeant Reeves appears at your campfire again. He looks different today. Alert, focused, his cavalry uniform crisp despite the conditions. Thought I'd find you boys here, he says, declining coffee this time. Wanted to check in before tomorrow. What's really happening? Wilkins asks directly. Reeves glances around, then lowers his voice. Confederate forces are dug in along a creek about 4 miles south. Good defensive position. Our boys have been probing their lines since yesterday, looking for weakness. Will we attack? You ask, your mouth suddenly dry. Or be attacked, Reeves says with a shrug. That's for the generals to decide. Either way, your regiment will likely see action. He stands to leave, then hesitates. Listen, he says, looking at each of you in turn. First time under fire there's no preparing for it. Just remember your training. Load, aim, fire, load, aim, fire. Don't think beyond that. As darkness falls, an unusual quiet settles over the camp. Men write letters home by firelight, clean their weapons for the dozenth time, or simply sit in contemplation. A chaplain moves among the companies, offering prayers and communion to those who want it. You find yourself unable to write the letter you've been composing in your head all day. What do you say when tomorrow might be your last day on earth? What words can possibly bridge that gap? In the end, you write simply, Dear Ma and Pa, we've marched to Virginia. I'm well. Don't worry. I'll write again when I can. Your loving son, Thomas. It feels inadequate, but it will have to do. You seal the envelope and give it to the company mail orderly, who promises to send it north with the next courier. The night deepens. Fires burn low. Around one nearby, a group of veterans from another regiment are sharing stories, not of battles, as you might expect, but of strange occurrences and superstitions. Swear on my mother's Bible, one bearded soldier is saying as you approach their circle. Saw a man at Fredericksburg take 7 bullets, center mass, and walk away without a scratch. Had a Bible in his breast pocket, stopped the first one, and the rest just went around him somehow. Another veteran snorts. That's nothing. We had a fella in our company, night before Antietam, dreamed he saw his own grave with his name on it. Next day, first volley, bullet right through the heart. You listen, both fascinated and disturbed. These are the tales of the war that don't make it into newspapers or official reports. "You know what keeps you alive out there?" asks a third soldier, a sergeant with an empty sleeve pinned up. "Not luck, not skill. It's having something to live for. Man wants to see home again bad enough. Somehow the bullets miss him." "Or having something worth dying for," adds another quietly. You return to your own fire thoughtful. Wilkins is cleaning his rifle again, though it's already immaculate. William stares into the flames, saying nothing. None of you mentions tomorrow. As you settle onto your bedroll for what might be your last peaceful night, you find yourself hyper-aware of everything. The scratch of wool blankets, distant laughter from another campfire, the occasional whinny of horses. Life, in all its messy detail, suddenly precious. Sleep, when it finally comes, is surprisingly deep. Your exhausted body overrides your anxious mind, and in the black hours before dawn, the bugle calls you to what waits ahead. The bugle tears through darkness, jerking you from sleep. For a moment, disorientation grips you. Where are you? Then reality crashes back. Virginia, the army, today. Around you, the camp erupts into activity. Men stumbling from tents, officers shouting orders, the clatter of equipment being gathered in the pre-dawn gloom. No time for proper breakfast, just hardtack stuffed into pockets and cold coffee gulped down between preparations. Captain Hayes moves through the company, his face grim. Full battle gear, 60 rounds of ammunition per man. Fill your canteens completely. Your hands shake slightly as you prepare. Loading your cartridge box feels different today. Each paper-wrapped bullet might soon be fired at another human being, or might save your life. The weight of your equipment, normally annoying, now feels reassuring, especially the bayonet. As the eastern sky lightens to grey, your regiment forms up with the others of your brigade. No drums this morning, no bands playing, just thousands of men standing silently in formation, breath fogging in the cool air. Colonel Montgomery, your regimental commander, rides to the front. Even from your position in the ranks, you can see his face is deadly serious. "Men of the 140th Pennsylvania," his voice carries over the quiet ranks. "Today we join the Army of the Potomac in battle against Confederate forces. You will conduct yourselves with courage and discipline. Remember your training. Remember why we fight. For the Union. For freedom." The speech is brief, lacking the fiery patriotism of recruitment rallies. This is different. This is real. The regiment moves out as dawn breaks, marching in column along a narrow country road. After about an hour, you notice a change in the surroundings. Fence rails torn down for firewood, trees splintered by artillery, deep ruts in the road from gun carriages, the signs of armies. Then you hear it. Not the distant rumble of yesterday, but actual gunfire. Sharp cracks of rifles, the heavier boom of artillery. It's still some distance away, but unmistakable now. Wilkins glances at you, sweat already beading on his forehead despite the cool morning. "Guess they started without us." No one laughs. Humour feels strange now, out of place. The column quickens its pace. Messages pass up and down the line of officers. Ahead, you can see a ridge where other Union regiments are already deployed. Blue lines against the green hillside. "That's our position," Captain Hayes announces, pointing to an open field near the centre of the ridge. "We're reinforcing the line. As your regiment approaches, the sounds of battle grow louder. You can now distinguish individual volleys, the synchronised crash of hundreds of rifles firing at once. The ground occasionally trembles from artillery. Your mouth is desert dry despite water from your canteen. Your bowels feel loose. Veterans say it happens to everyone before battle, the body preparing to shed weight for flight or fight. Some men stop to relieve themselves at the roadside, ignoring the usual camp modesty. "Jesus," William whispers beside you. "Look at that." Beyond the ridge, smoke hangs over the distant tree line, white puffs from artillery mixed with the darker smoke of rifle fire. Through gaps in the smoke, you can see flashes of movement, men advancing, retreating, or falling. Colonel Montgomery halts the regiment at the base of the ridge. "Fix bayonets." The sound of steel blades clicking onto 1,500 rifle barrels sends a chill through you. This isn't drill anymore. You climb the ridge in line of battle, shoulder to shoulder with the men of your company, other companies ahead and behind. Every step brings the sounds of conflict closer, louder. At the crest, you get your first clear view of the battlefield below. It's nothing like you imagined. A creek runs through a shallow valley bordered by woods on the far side. Between the ridge where you stand and that creek is open farmland, now torn by shell holes and scattered with dark shapes you realize with horror are bodies. The far woods are shrouded in gun smoke, but you can see flashes of fire within, Confederate positions. Union batteries are positioned along your ridge, the artillerymen working their guns with mechanical precision. Every few seconds, a cannon fires with a deafening boom, adding to the constant crash of sound. Captain Hayes positions your company in a gap between two batteries. "We hold this line," he shouts over the noise. "Fire on command only." You stand in the front rank, rifle gripped so tightly your knuckles are white. Beside you, William's face is pale, his lips moving in what might be prayer. On your other side, Wilkins stares ahead with strange intensity. Minutes pass like hours. The Confederate artillery has the range of your position now. Shells explode on the ridge, showering dirt and deadly fragments. You flinch at each explosion, fighting the urge to duck or run. 100 yards to your right, a shell lands directly on a gun crew. The explosion lifts one man completely off his feet, throwing him yards away. Another crumples instantly. The survivors continue loading their cannon as if nothing happened. "Get ready," Captain Hayes shouts. Through the smoke in the valley, you see movement. A line of grey, Confederate infantry advancing across the open ground toward your position. Their battle flags flutter above them. Even at this distance, you can see bayonets gleaming. Colonel Montgomery rides behind your line. "Steady, boys, hold your fire." The grey line advances steadily despite artillery tearing gaps in their ranks. They're within rifle range now, but still no order comes to fire. The waiting is its own kind of torture. The command finally comes when the Confederates are about 300 yards away. You raise your rifle, trying to steady it against your shoulder as you've practiced. But this is different from shooting at targets. These are men coming toward you, intent on killing you if they can. Fire. 1,500 rifles discharge as one. The noise is like physical force punching through your ears. The recoil slams your rifle butt against your shoulder. Smoke envelops the line, so thick you can hardly see. Through breaks in the smoke, you glimpse the effect of your volley. The Confederate line staggers, dozens of men falling, but they don't break. They continue advancing, and now they're returning fire. Bullets whip past with angry buzzing sounds. Some strike the ground, kicking up dirt. Others hit with the sickening thud of lead striking flesh. The man 2 spaces to your left jerks backward, a dark hole appearing in his forehead. He drops without a sound, dead weight. "Load," Captain Hayes orders. Your training takes over. Bite cartridge, pour powder, ram bullet, place cap. Each motion practiced hundreds of times, now performed with desperate urgency. Aim fire. Another volley, another shock of noise and smoke. The rhythm continues. Load, aim, fire, load, aim, fire. As if time has compressed into just these 3 actions. Your world narrows to the rifle in your hands, the choking smoke around you, the grey line still advancing despite your fire. You lose track of how many volleys you've fired. Your shoulder aches from the rifle's recoil. Your ears ring so badly you can barely hear commands, following the actions of men beside you instead. The Confederate line has closed to about 100 yards, close enough to see faces beneath the hats, to distinguish officers from enlisted men. Someone screams to your right, not the scream of fear, but the higher, more terrible sound of agony. You don't look, can't look. Keep loading. Keep firing. A new sound cuts through the chaos. The rebel yell. The Confederate line surges forward at a run, their high-pitched battle cry sending ice through your veins. "Stand firm," Colonel Montgomery shouts, riding behind your line. "Repel them with cold steel if—" His words cut off as a bullet strikes him. He slumps forward over his horse's neck, then falls heavily to the ground. The horse bolts. The Confederate charge reaches the bottom of the ridge and starts up the slope. They're only 50 yards away now, running hard despite their casualties. Captain Hayes draws his sword. Prepare to receive charge. You grip your rifle with bayonet fixed, heart hammering against your ribs. They're going to reach your line. This will be hand to hand. But then, movement to your left. Fresh Union troops arriving at a run, thousands of them, forming quickly into battle line. Their artillery unlimbers on a small rise, the crews working with frantic energy. A new thunder joins the cacophony as these guns open fire on the Confederate flank. The effect is devastating. Entire sections of the Grey Line disappear in explosions of dirt and smoke. The Confederate charge falters, then stops. For a moment, the battleground becomes a tableau. Blue and grey lines facing each other across a shrinking gap, the air between filled with smoke and death. Then the grey line breaks. Not all at once, but man by man, squad by squad, they begin falling back toward the creek. Their retreat quickly becomes general. "Fire, pour it into them," Captain Hayes orders. You find yourself firing mechanically, reloading and firing again without conscious thought. The smoke is so thick you can barely see your targets. You're not sure if you're hitting anything, not sure if you want to. The Confederate retreat becomes a rout, men running, dropping equipment to move faster. Union artillery continues firing into their backs as they flee toward the creek and the woods beyond. And then, sudden silence. Not complete, moans of the wounded rise from the field. Officers still shout commands, but the constant crash of battle subsides. You stand panting, ears ringing, surrounded by smoke that slowly drifts away on the breeze. Your rifle barrel is too hot to touch. Your mouth tastes of gunpowder. Your uniform is soaked with sweat and black with powder residue. "They're running," Wilkins shouts, voice cracking with emotion. "We beat them." But there's no jubilation in the line. Just exhaustion and stunned silence as reality begins to register. Men looking around, counting who's missing. William stands beside you, pale but intact. Did you see the colonel go down?" he asks, shakily. You nod, unable to form words yet. The image of Colonel Montgomery falling from his horse seems branded into your vision. Captain Hayes moves along the line, checking casualties. Your company has been lucky. Only 3 dead, a dozen wounded. Others fared worse. The company to your right lost over half its men. "Get water and ammunition," the captain orders. "This isn't over." He's right. In the distance, Confederate artillery still fires occasionally. Their infantry has retreated, but they're regrouping beyond the creek. This was just one engagement in what might be days of battle. The wounded are carried to the rear, where field hospitals have been established in farmhouses and barns. The dead are laid in rows, awaiting burial details. You help carry one of your company, a man named Ellis, who you barely knew, placing him gently beside others in blue uniforms. Hours pass in a strange blur. You help distribute ammunition, carry water to the artillery crews, build hasty breastworks along the ridge using fence rails and dirt, anything to stay busy to avoid thinking about what just happened, what might happen next. Late afternoon finds you sitting with Wilkins and William in the shelter of a stone wall. You're eating salt pork and hardtack, though none of you has much appetite. The food sticks in your throat, but you force it down, knowing you need strength. "I never fired a gun at a living thing before today," William says quietly. "Not even a rabbit?" Wilkins nods. "I kept imagining they were targets, like at drill." He pauses. "Except targets don't scream when they fall." You say nothing. What is there to say? You're all trying to process experiences that have no frame of reference in normal life. You boys made it then. Sergeant Reeves appears beside your wall, dismounting from his horse with fluid grace. His uniform is dusty, and there's a bandage around his left forearm, but he seems otherwise intact. "Your first taste of it," he says, sitting heavily beside you. Not a question. "Is it always like that?" you manage to ask. Reeves shakes his head. No, sometimes it's worse. He accepts a drink from your canteen. You held the line. That's what matters. We killed them, William says, voice hollow. We just killed them. They were trying to kill you too, Reeves replies, not unkindly. That's war. A shout from the ridge interrupts whatever else he might have said. Officers are calling men back to positions. In the distance, movement in the Confederate lines suggests another attack may be forming. Back to it, Reeves says, standing. Remember what I told you. Focus on the immediate. Load, aim, fire. The rest is, he gestures vaguely. The rest comes later. The expected Confederate attack doesn't materialize before darkness falls. Instead, both armies settle into an uneasy nighttime vigilance. Your regiment remains in position on the ridge, half the men awake at any time while others catch what sleep they can. You're among the first watch, standing in the darkness, rifle ready, staring toward where you know the Confederate lines must be, though you can see nothing. Occasionally, a flare illuminates the landscape, casting eerie shadows or artillery fires blindly into the night. The strangest thing is the sound. Not battle noise now, but the moans and cries of wounded men still lying on the field between the lines. Men, too, badly hurt to crawl to safety or caught in the no-man's land where neither side can safely retrieve them. Someone should help them, you whisper to no one in particular. Can't, responds a veteran nearby. Anybody goes out there gets shot. They'll send parties under white flags at dawn, maybe, if both sides agree. The thought of wounded men lying all night in the darkness is almost worse than the battle itself. Some call for water, others for their mothers. Many just moan, a sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere in the darkness. When your watch ends at midnight, you find no rest in sleep. Nightmares jolt you awake repeatedly. Images of men running toward you with bayonets, of Colonel Montgomery falling, of faces you don't know staring with dead eyes. Dawn comes grey and misty. The valley below the ridge is shrouded in fog, obscuring whatever movement might be happening in the Confederate lines. The field of yesterday's battle is now fully visible, a landscape of discarded equipment, shell holes, and bodies. So many bodies. During the night, many of the wounded manage to crawl to one side or the other, but dozens remain, some moving weakly, others ominously still. Captain Hayes gathers your company. His face is haggard, eyes red from lack of sleep. We're being relieved, he announces. Another division is taking our position. We're to move north and then east to join a flanking movement. The news brings no celebration, just nods of acknowledgement. After yesterday, emotional responses seem muted, as if something inside has been temporarily switched off. Your regiment marches away from the ridge by mid-morning. The sounds of battle resume behind you, the fight continuing with fresh troops. You feel a strange mix of guilt and relief at leaving. The march takes you through terrain untouched by yesterday's fighting. Farmland still neat and productive. Orchards heavy with early summer fruit. The contrast with the blasted landscape of the battlefield is jarring. Permission to fill canteens, sir? Wilkins asks when you pass a clear stream. Captain Hayes nods. Quickly. The cool water is the most wonderful thing you've tasted in days. You drink deeply, then splash some on your face, washing away layers of sweat, gunpowder and dirt. Your reflection in the water startles you. Is that really your face? Hollowed cheeks? Sunburned forehead, eyes that look somehow older than they did a week ago. The face of someone you don't fully recognize. The regiment continues its march through the afternoon, eventually joining a larger column moving toward the sound of distant battle, another fight happening somewhere ahead. By evening, you've covered nearly 15 miles and find yourselves on another ridge overlooking different Confederate positions. Camp is made hastily. No tents tonight, just sleep where you can find level ground. The usual routines of army life resume with mechanical precision. Cook fires, coffee, hardtack soaked to edible softness, cleaning rifles fouled by yesterday's firing. You sit with your company, listening to subdued conversations around the fires, men speaking of home, of before, small talk that carefully avoids mentioning yesterday or tomorrow. "You know what I miss most," Wilkins says suddenly. "Ice cream, stupid, right? With everything else, that's what I think about." "Fresh bread," offers William, still warm from the oven. Others join in. Clean sheets, coffee that doesn't taste like mud, the sound of church bells on Sunday morning. This is how soldiers cope, you realise, finding moments of normal in the midst of the insane, remembering they're still human despite what they've seen, what they've done. As darkness deepens, a messenger arrives for Captain Hayes. You watch as he reads the dispatch by firelight, his expression unchanging. "Tomorrow," he tells the company officers gathered around him, "we attack at dawn." The words pass through the camp like a chill wind. Tomorrow, again. You lie on your blanket beneath stars partly obscured by drifting smoke. Your body aches from marching, from the bruising recoil of your rifle, from tension held too long in every muscle. Sleep seems impossible despite exhaustion. William lies nearby, also awake. "I keep seeing them," he whispers. "The ones that fell when we fired. They were just there, and then they weren't." You nod in the darkness, though he probably can't see it. "I know." "Do you think it gets easier?" The question hangs between you. You think of Sergeant Reeves, of the darkness in his green eyes, of his words about indifference being worse than fear. "I hope not," you say finally. Sleep eventually comes, but it's thin and restless. The bugle seems to sound minutes after you've closed your eyes, though in reality it's been several hours. Pre-dawn, another day. The routine begins again. Equipment checked, ammunition distributed, cold breakfast eaten quickly. No one mentions fear, though it hangs in the air as palpably as the morning mist. Captain Hayes addresses the company as you form up. "I know you're tired," he says simply. "I know yesterday was difficult, but today needs your best again. Stay together. Watch out for each other." It's not a speech that will be recorded in history books, but somehow it's exactly what you need to hear. As the sun breaks the horizon, your regiment moves forward with others of your division. Thousands of men in blue advancing toward Confederate positions. You can now see clearly. Earthworks along a tree line, artillery positioned at strategic points, grey uniforms moving behind barricades. The same fear rises in your throat, the same certainty that you can't possibly survive this. But now there's something else too. The knowledge that you've done this before, that the men beside you have too. Wilkins glances at you as you advance across the open ground. "See you on the other side," he says with a forced grin. William nods grimly on your other side. Together. The Confederate artillery opens fire. The ground ahead erupts in explosions of dirt and smoke. Men fall. The line continues forward. You grip your rifle tightly. Load, aim, fire. Like Reeves said, don't think beyond that. The immediate is all that matters now. The battle begins anew. Days blend together after that. Battle becomes routine, if such a thing is possible. You learn to function with little sleep, to eat when food is available, to find moments of rest in the strangest places. Your body adapts to constant movement, to the weight of your gear, to the bruising recoil of your rifle. The grand choreography of armies continues, marching, fighting, retreating, advancing. Sometimes you understand the strategy, often you don't. You're a small piece in an enormous machine, moving where directed without seeing the whole picture. 3 weeks into your first campaign, your regiment is pulled back from the front lines for rest and resupply. The camp established in a peaceful meadow feels like paradise after what you've experienced. Real tents, regular meals, no immediate danger of artillery shells tearing through your sleep. "I could get used to this," Wilkins sighs, stretched out on his blanket in the shade of an oak tree. His face is deeply tanned now, except for a pale strip across his forehead where his cap sits. Like all of you, he's noticeably thinner than when you started. William nods agreement, carefully writing a letter home. The quiet farmer's son has changed perhaps the most, still reserved but with a new steadiness about him. Battle seems to have settled something in his character. Mail call. The announcement sends a ripple of excitement through the camp. Letters from home are precious currency here, worth more than tobacco or coffee for morale. The company gathers around as the mail orderly reads names. When yours is called, your heart leaps. 2 letters. One from your mother and one from your father, a rare correspondent. You retreat to a quiet spot to read them. Your mother's letter is news of home, crops growing well, neighbours helping with the harvest, church socials and local gossip, normal life continuing in your absence. She asks about your health, your food, whether you have warm enough clothes, motherly concerns that now seem almost quaint given what you've experienced. Your father's letter is briefer but strikes deeper. I pray for your safety daily, he writes. Remember that courage isn't absence of fear, but mastery of it. Your grandfather said that after Shiloh, and I've never forgotten it. We're proud of you, son. The words blur as your eyes fill unexpectedly. You fold both letters carefully and tuck them into your breast pocket, close to your heart. When you return to your company's area, Sergeant Reeves is there. The cavalry scout has appeared periodically throughout your campaign, checking on you and your friends with a gruff concern he pretends not to feel. Heard your outfit was getting a breather, he says, squatting beside your fire. He looks more worn than when you first met him. A fresh scar on his chin, uniform more threadbare, but his green eyes still alert. Any news from the other fronts? William asks, always hungry for the bigger picture. Reeves accepts a cup of coffee. Vicksburg's still holding out against Grant, but word is they're starving in there, and there's something brewing in Pennsylvania. Lee's army is moving north. This catches everyone's attention. Confederate forces pushing into Union territory is significant news. How far north? You ask, thinking of your family's farm. Not sure yet, but far enough to worry the brass. Reeves sips his coffee. Enough war talk. Any of you boys playing cards tonight? The evening turns to poker, with Reeves teaching you more advanced strategies than the basics he showed before. You bet with hardtack cookies instead of money, and for a few hours, the war seems distant. As darkness falls and conversation quiets, Reeves grows reflective. Third summer of this war, he says, gazing into the fire. Sometimes I can hardly remember what came before, what it was like to sleep in a bed, wake up without wondering if it might be my last morning. No one speaks, each lost in similar thoughts. Had a dream last night, Reeves continues. I was back home in Pennsylvania, working the field behind my father's house, sun on my back, no sound but the insects and the rhythm of the scythe. He pauses, woke up crying like a baby. Isn't that something? In this moment you see beneath the veteran's armor to the man beneath, just as frightened, just as homesick as any of you, but carrying it longer. We'll get back there, William says with quiet certainty. All of us. Reeves smiles, a rare sight. Sure we will, farm boy, sure we will. The peaceful interlude lasts 3 days. On the 4th morning, orders come to march again. Word spreads through the camp. You're heading north to counter Lee's advance into Pennsylvania. The war is moving toward home. The march is long and grueling, covering nearly 20 miles each day. Summer heat bakes the roads to dust that coats your uniforms, irritates your eyes and dries your throat. Water becomes precious, each creek or well a moment of blessed relief. But there's a different energy to this march. You're moving to defend northern soil, perhaps even your own state. The abstract cause of Union becomes suddenly concrete. Towns you pass through welcome you with food and water. Civilians line the roads cheering as your regiment marches through. Women press small gifts into soldiers' hands. Handkerchiefs, small Bibles, cookies wrapped in paper. Children run alongside the column until chased away by sergeants. Almost feels like we're people again, not just soldiers, Wilkins remarks after a young girl gives him a bright red apple. The column pushes on, days blending into a haze of dust, sweat, and blistered feet. Rumors fly constantly. Lee's army is headed for Harrisburg, no, for Philadelphia, no, for Washington itself. The outcome of the war might hang on the coming battle. One evening, camped in a small valley in Maryland, Captain Hayes addresses the company. He looks older than his years now, the responsibility of command etching lines in his face. "Tomorrow we cross into Pennsylvania," he says. "Intelligence suggests Confederate forces are converging near a town called Gettysburg. We'll likely engage them within 2 to 3 days." A ripple of murmurs passes through the gathered men. Gettysburg is just 70 miles from Pittsburgh. This is home territory. "I know many of you are Pennsylvania men," Hayes continues. "This fight will be different. It's one thing to defend the Union as an idea. It's another to defend your own soil, your own people." He pauses, looking at each man in turn. "Remember your training. Remember your discipline. That's what will carry the day, not emotion." After he leaves, your company sits quietly around the fire. The gravity of the moment has settled on everyone. "My cousin lives near Gettysburg," Thompson says, breaking the silence. "Has a dairy farm. My aunt and uncle are in Chambersburg," another adds. "Just west of there. Hope they've moved east," Williams says softly. "Confederate army strips the land bare as it moves. Takes everything? Food, horses, even shoes." The thought of your own family potentially in the path of war makes your stomach knot. Your farm is further west. Probably safe, but who can be certain where armies might turn? Morning brings renewed march, crossing from Maryland into Pennsylvania. The landscape feels familiar: rolling hills, tidy farms, woods like those near your home. But everywhere are signs of an army's passage: trampled fields, fences torn down for firewood, abandoned wagons. And increasingly, the injured, wounded men from cavalry skirmishes, bandaged and dazed, pass your column heading south. Ambulance wagons creak along the roads. The signs of battle grow more numerous the further north you push. On the evening of July 1st, your regiment halts a few miles south of Gettysburg. The distant thunder of artillery has been your companion all day, growing louder as you approach. The battle has begun without you. Camp is made hastily as darkness falls. No fires permitted. You're too close to enemy positions. Cold rations eaten in darkness. Extra ammunition distributed. Equipment checked and rechecked. Sleep is nearly impossible. The sporadic boom of artillery continues through the night. Occasionally the sky to the north glows briefly. Flash of guns or burning buildings. Impossible to tell. No one speaks much. Each man is alone with his thoughts, preparing in his own way for what morning will bring. You find yourself thinking of your first battle, how terrified you were. You're still afraid. Anyone sane would be, but it's different now. Experience has replaced blind panic with a focused dread. You know what's coming. That's both better and worse. Dawn on July 2nd breaks hazy and already warm, promising brutal heat. Your regiment is roused before first light, forming up with others of your brigade. No breakfast beyond hardtack stuffed in pockets. No coffee to cut the chill of dawn. The march to the battlefield takes less than an hour. As you crest a low ridge, the scene unfolds before you, a panorama of war stretching across rolling Pennsylvania farmland. Gettysburg sits to the north, a small crossroads town now the focus of two massive armies. To the west and north, Confederate forces hold positions along Seminary Ridge. Union troops occupy the high ground south of town, Cemetery Hill and a fishhook-shaped line extending south along Cemetery Ridge. It's the largest concentration of military might you've ever seen. Tens of thousands of men, hundreds of artillery pieces, all positioned for the day's coming slaughter. They've got the high ground, William observes. That's good. Your regiment is directed to a position on the Union left flank, near a hill covered with massive boulders that someone says is called Little Round Top. As you march into position, you pass field hospitals already overflowing with yesterday's wounded. Surgeons work at makeshift tables, sleeves rolled up, arms bloody to the elbows. Don't look, Wilkins advises, but you can't help it. The image of a pile of amputated limbs beside one hospital tent burns into your memory. Your company takes position in a line of battle, rifles loaded, bayonets fixed, and then, waiting, the soldiers' eternal occupation. Minutes stretch to hours as the summer sun climbs, beating down mercilessly. Around noon, a rider approaches at a gallop, Sergeant Reeves. He reins his lathered horse to a stop near Captain Hayes. "Confederates massing for attack on the left," he reports loudly enough for nearby men to hear, "coming through that peach orchard to the west. Be ready." He catches your eye as he turns his horse, gives a quick nod, and gallops back toward the Union command position. The warning ripples through the ranks. Men check weapons again, take sips from canteens, adjust equipment nervously. "If something happens to me," William says suddenly beside you, "there's a letter in my haversack for my mother." You nod. "Same, inside pocket." "Mine's for my girl," Wilkins adds. "Tell her I didn't suffer, even if I did." This conversation, or ones like it, happens before every battle, a soldier's will and testament entrusted to friends who might soon need the same favour. The attack, when it comes, is like a force of nature. Confederate artillery opens first, shells screaming overhead or exploding among your ranks. Men duck instinctively, though it offers little protection. The air fills with smoke, dirt, and the screams of the wounded. Then the rebel yell rises from the west, that high-pitched howl that still raises gooseflesh on your arms. Through the smoke and dust you see them coming, grey lines advancing through the peach orchard, battle flags held high. "Steady, men," Captain Hayes shouts. "Wait for the order." Union artillery responds, throwing canister shot into the advancing Confederates. The effect is horrific, like a giant shotgun blast, cutting swathes through the grey ranks. But still, they come. Ready, aim, fire. Your regiment delivers a synchronized volley. Through the smoke, you see men fall. Gaps appear in the Confederate line, quickly filled as those behind step forward. The cycle begins again. Load, aim, fire. Your world shrinks to these actions, performed over and over. As the Confederate attack pushes closer, they reach the stone wall at the base of your position. Hand-to-hand combat erupts, bayonets thrusting, rifle butts swinging, men grappling in desperate struggles. A Confederate soldier scales the wall directly in front of you, a bearded man hardly older than yourself. Your rifle is empty, his bayonet is fixed. Time seems to slow. Then William fires from beside you, the bullet striking the man center mass. He falls backward without a sound, eyes still open. "Reload!" William shouts at you, already ramming another bullet down his own barrel. The attack continues for what feels like hours but might be minutes. Time has no meaning in battle. Confederate forces push hard against your position, threatening to break through at several points. At a crucial moment, with your line wavering, Captain Hayes leaps atop the stone wall, sword raised. "Hold the line, Pennsylvania. This is our soil." His courage rallies the company. A renewed volley tears into the Confederate ranks, now dangerously exposed in the open field before your position. The rebel attack falters, then stalls. Grey-clad soldiers begin falling back, first individually, then in groups. Union forces push forward cautiously, reclaiming ground yielded earlier. As the Confederate forces retreat towards Seminary Ridge, a strange calm descends. Not peace. Artillery still fires intermittently, sharpshooters on both sides still crack away, but the immediate storm has passed. You stand dazed in the aftermath, ears ringing, throat raw from gunpowder and shouting. Around you, men check for injuries, reload weapons, help the wounded to the rear. The ground before your position is littered with bodies in grey and blue, fallen equipment, churned earth. William sits heavily on a rock, face blackened with powder except where sweat has cut trails down his cheeks. "We held," he says simply. Captain Hayes moves among the company, checking casualties, offering words of encouragement. His uniform sleeve is torn and bloodied, but he seems unaware of the injury. "They'll come again," he tells you and William. "Maybe not today, but tomorrow for certain. Lee can't afford to retreat without a decisive engagement." The rest of the day passes in tense vigilance, periodically fighting flares on other parts of the line, especially the Union right flank on Cemetery Hill, but your position remains relatively quiet. As darkness falls, you help build up the stone wall into a more substantial barricade. Others fetch water for the wounded, distribute ammunition, or simply collapse in exhaustion. Wilkins returns from helping at a field hospital, his face ashen. "They're amputating down there like it's going out of style," he says, dropping beside you behind the wall. "Arms, legs, doesn't matter. Doc says it's remove or lose 'em to gangrene." You hand him your canteen silently. What can you say? This is the reality of your world now. The night passes fitfully. Most men sleep in shifts, keeping watch for Confederate movement. Occasional artillery fire lights the sky, but no major action comes. Dawn reveals the battlefield in harsh clarity. The bodies still lie where they fell, blue and grey together in death. Wounded men who couldn't be reached still call weakly for water or aid. The July heat will make their suffering worse as the day progresses. Breakfast is hardtack and tepid water. Your company has been reduced by nearly a quarter. Dead, wounded, or missing. Those remaining look hollowed out, faces gaunt with fatigue and tension. "Wagon coming," someone calls. Through the morning haze, a supply wagon approaches your position from the rear. The driver, a civilian contractor, looks nervously at the carnage as he pulls up. "Got rations and ammunition," he announces. "Coffee too, if you've got means to brew it." The mention of coffee creates the first spark of genuine enthusiasm you've seen in days. Someone produces a dented pot. Water is fetched. Soon the blessed aroma wafts through your position. As you sip the hot, bitter brew, first coffee in 3 days, you gaze across the field toward the Confederate positions on Seminary Ridge. In the clear morning light, you can make out activity there. Troops moving, artillery being repositioned. "They're getting ready for something big," William observes, following your gaze. Captain Hayes approaches, looking grim. "Command believes Lee will launch his main attack today directly at the center of our line. We're being held in reserve, but be ready to move quickly if needed." The waiting resumes, that terrible, nerve-shredding anticipation of battle. The July sun climbs higher, beating down mercilessly. Wounded men lying in the open begin to suffer visibly from heat and thirst. Around 1 o'clock, the relative quiet shatters. Confederate artillery opens fire all along Seminary Ridge, over 100 guns firing almost simultaneously. The bombardment is unlike anything you've experienced, shells raining down on Union positions with devastating effect. Your company takes cover behind your stone wall as best you can, but there's little true protection from the barrage. Earth erupts in geysers of dirt and rock. Men are thrown through the air by near hits. The noise is so overwhelming that orders must be shouted directly into ears to be understood. This continues for nearly 2 hours, a massive expenditure of Confederate ammunition clearly meant to soften Union defenses for an infantry assault. When the bombardment finally slackens, the silence seems almost as shocking as the noise was before. Men emerge cautiously from whatever cover they found, ears bleeding, uniforms coated in dust, movements dazed. Then you see it, grey lines forming on Seminary Ridge. Not at your position, but toward the centre of the Union line. "They're coming," William says, pointing. Nearly 15,000 Confederate troops begin advancing across the open ground toward the Union center, the largest single assault you've witnessed. Even from your position a mile south, the sight is awe-inspiring and terrible. Union artillery opens on the advancing lines. Huge gaps appear in the Confederate ranks, immediately filled as men close up. Still they come, maintaining formation despite devastating losses. Captain Hayes receives a dispatch from a courier. "We're moving," he shouts. "Double quick to reinforce the center." Your company forms up with the rest of the regiment, then begins running toward the point of Confederate attack. The ground shakes beneath your feet. From artillery, from thousands of men moving at once, from the very earth itself seeming to shudder at what's happening above. You run until your lungs burn, equipment jangling, sweat pouring down your face. The sounds of battle grow louder, the crash of rifles, screams of wounded, officers shouting commands. But before you reach the center, another courier intercepts your column. New orders: return to your original position. The assault will be met without you. From your stone wall, you watch the Confederate assault, later to be known as Pickett's charge, break against the Union center like a wave against rocks. Men in gray reach the Union line in places, briefly penetrating the defenses before being killed or captured. Most never make it that far, falling in the open ground under withering fire. Within an hour, it's over. The surviving Confederate troops retreat to Seminary Ridge, leaving thousands of dead and wounded on the field. The high water mark of the Confederacy, someone will later call it. As evening approaches, rain begins to fall. Gentle at first, then a downpour that washes the blood-soaked earth and offers some relief from the July heat. The wounded, still lying between lines, lift faces to the sky, catching rain in parched mouths. You sit with your back against the stone wall, rain soaking through your uniform, feeling a bone-deep weariness that transcends physical fatigue. Beside you, William and Wilkins are similarly silent, lost in private thoughts. 3 days of battle, tens of thousands dead or wounded. And for what? The same hills and fields that were here before, now transformed into a vast graveyard. Captain Hayes approaches, somehow still standing despite what must be complete exhaustion. They're retreating, he says, Confederate forces pulling back south toward Virginia. The news should feel like victory. Instead, it's received with numb acknowledgement. Too much has been seen, too much experienced for simple celebration. Get some rest, Hayes continues, his voice softening. You've earned it. Rest. The word sounds foreign, from another life. You close your eyes, rain washing your face clean of powder and dirt for the first time in days. Despite the discomfort, wet clothes, hard ground, the moans of wounded, sleep comes almost instantly. Your last thought before darkness claims you is of home, your own bed, soft and dry, waiting in a world that now seems impossibly distant. But you've survived, you've held the line, and tomorrow, whatever it brings, you'll face it with William and Wilkins beside you, no longer strangers, but brothers forged in fire. The morning after Gettysburg dawns wet and grey. Rain continues to fall, turning the already churned earth to mud. You wake stiff and sore, clothes still damp, back aching from sleeping against stone, but you're alive. That simple fact feels like a miracle after what you've witnessed. The Confederate Army is indeed retreating, pulling back toward the Potomac River and the relative safety of Virginia, but they leave behind thousands of their dead and wounded men, who now become the responsibility of the victorious Union forces. Your company is assigned to burial detail. It's grim work collecting bodies that have lain in the July heat for days, digging mass graves along the ridgelines, recording names when possible from letters or personal effects. The dead are beyond suffering, but the wounded still linger. Field hospitals overflow with broken men. Surgeons work without rest, faces haggard, aprons stiff with dried blood. Outside the hospital tents, limbs pile up like cordwood. Never thought I'd be grateful for rain, Wilkins says, as you pause to rest, leaning on a shovel. Keeps the smell down. He's right. Without the rain, the stench of decay would be unbearable. Even with it, you breathe shallowly, trying not to inhale too deeply. William works silently nearby, carefully arranging a Confederate soldier's body in a grave. He's been quieter than usual since the battle, introspective in a way that worries you. You all right? You ask when Wilkins moves away to help with another body. William nods, not looking up. Just thinking about the waste of it all. These men had families, farms or businesses, dreams, and now they're just, he gestures at the grave, You have no answer. The scale of death at Gettysburg defies comprehension. Nearly 50,000 casualties in 3 days, dead, wounded, or missing. Numbers so large they become abstract, meaningless, until you look at individual faces. The young boy in grey who couldn't have been more than 15. The Union sergeant found with a picture of his children still clutched in his hand. The Confederate and Union soldier discovered dead together, each having killed the other with bayonets. These are not statistics. These are men, sons, brothers, fathers. The burial detail continues for 3 days. By the end, your hands are blistered from digging, your soul numb from handling the dead. But there's no time for proper recovery. Lee's army is escaping back to Virginia, and your regiment is ordered to join the pursuit. July in Pennsylvania becomes a blur of marching through rain-soaked countryside. Roads turn to quagmires, slowing both the Confederate retreat and your pursuit. Men march with mud-caked boots that add pounds to every step. Wagons sink to their axles, requiring dozens of hands to extract them. "This ain't a pursuit," complains a veteran in your company. "It's a goddamn mud race. Nobody's winning." At night, finding dry ground to sleep becomes the primary concern. You learn to cut pine boughs for bedding, keeping your body off the sodden earth. Fires are nearly impossible to start with wet wood, so meals are cold and miserable. Yet despite the conditions, morale is surprisingly steady. Gettysburg was a victory costly, but clear. For the first time, many feel the tide of war might be turning. One evening, huddled beneath a hastily erected shelter of rubber blankets, Captain Hayes shares rumors he's heard from headquarters. Vicksburg has fallen, he tells your company. Grant captured the whole Confederate garrison. Mississippi River's under Union control now. The news brings subdued cheers. Vicksburg, combined with Gettysburg, represents the greatest Union success of the war so far. "So it's almost over?" someone asks hopefully. Hayes shakes his head. "Not by a long shot, but we're hitting them where it hurts now." The pursuit of Lee continues for weeks, though it becomes increasingly clear that his army will escape across the Potomac before you can bring them to battle again. The pace slackens as this reality sets in. In late July, your regiment makes camp near a small Maryland town. For the first time since Gettysburg, proper tents are erected. Supply wagons arrive with fresh rations. Men are allowed to bathe in a nearby creek, washing away weeks of accumulated grime. The pause is welcome. Your body needs recovery, not just from battle, but from the grueling pace that followed. Feet need time to heal, muscles to rest, minds to process what they've experienced. Mail arrives with the supply wagons. You receive 3 letters, saved carefully until evening when you can read them by firelight. Your mother writes of home, the wheat harvest coming in well, neighbours helping with farm work in your absence, church gatherings praying for soldiers. Reading it takes you back to your childhood kitchen, almost able to smell bread baking, hear your mother humming as she works. Your father's letter is briefer, but no less precious. He mentions a newspaper account of Gettysburg he read, wondering if you were part of it. Your mother worries constantly, he writes, but I tell her our boy is made of stern stuff. Still, take what care you can. The 3rd letter surprises you. It's from your sister Mary. She rarely writes, busy with her own children, but this letter is different. I had a dream about you, she writes. You were standing in our old fishing spot by the creek, looking just as you did before you left. I called to you, but you couldn't hear me. When I woke, I felt I needed to write, to tell you that no matter what terrible things you've seen or done, you're still our Thomas. Still the boy who taught my son to whistle and helped father with the spring planting. War changes men, they say, but it needn't take your soul if you don't let it. You fold the letter carefully, throat tight with emotion. How did she know exactly what you needed to hear? That night you sit with William and Wilkins beside your fire. For once, there's enough food, salt pork, beans, hardtack softened in coffee, and even some dried apple slices sent from a Ladies' Aid Society in Philadelphia. Got a letter from home? William asks, noticing your thoughtful expression. You nod. My sister says she dreamed about me. Wilkins snorts. My ma used to claim she could see the future in tea leaves, said I'd marry a tall blonde. Only blonde in our town was Bessie Miller, and she had a face like a horse. The unexpected humour breaks your melancholy. You find yourself laughing, really laughing, for what feels like the first time in months. William smiles too, though his eyes remain distant. My brother used to write about his dreams. Before Antietam, he pokes at the fire with a stick. Sometimes I think I see him. Just glimpses, at the edge of camp, during battle. The admission hangs in the night air. Not the kind of thing men typically share. You think he's watching over you? You ask quietly. William shrugs. Maybe, or maybe I just can't let him go. My uncle lost his arm at Shiloh, Wilkins offers. Says he still feels it sometimes. Itches he can't scratch, pain in fingers that aren't there anymore. He takes a swig from his canteen. Maybe it's like that. The dead leave pieces behind in us. This is new territory conversation, deeper than weather or rations or battle strategies. But something about the quiet night, the relative safety, the letters from home, has opened a space for such thoughts. I keep thinking about that Confederate boy at Gettysburg, you admit. The one who came over the wall, looked right at me before William shot him. Can't get his face out of my head. William nods. First one I've been sure I killed. In the other fights, you fire into smoke. Never really know if you hit anyone. He sighs. But him, I know. Does it bother you? Wilkins asks. Yes and no. William stares into the fire. If I hadn't shot him, he would have bayoneted Fletcher. I'd do it again. But still hurts. You finish for him. Yeah. The conversation shifts to lighter topics after that. Wilkins tells a story about sneaking into a neighbour's orchard as a boy and getting chased by geese. William describes his family's farm in Ohio. You share memories of fishing trips with your father. Normal memories from before, when the world made sense. As others around the fire drift off to sleep, Sergeant Reeves appears, seeming to materialize from the darkness. He looks travel-worn, his cavalry uniform dusty from the road. "Evening, boys," he greets quietly, accepting the cup of coffee William offers. "Thought I'd find you here. Any news?" you ask. Reeves nods. Lee's across the Potomac, made it back to Virginia with most of his army intact. Could have been worse for them. He sips his coffee. Command's trying to decide what's next. Push into Virginia again, probably. The news settles on you with a heaviness. The war continues. Of course it does. Gettysburg was a victory, but not an ending. How much longer, do you think? William asks what you're all wondering. Reeves considers the question seriously. The Confederacy's bleeding resources now. Vicksburg cuts off their western territories, but they're fighting on home ground, which gives them advantages. He sighs. Another year, maybe two. Depends how much punishment they can take. How much we can deliver. Another year, maybe two. The time frame stretches before you like an endless road. You boys are different, Reeves observes after a silence. Since Gettysburg, I see it in your eyes. How so? Wilkins asks. You've seen the elephant now, really seen it, not just skirmishes or minor engagements. You were part of something that'll be in history books 100 years from now. Reeves stares into his coffee, changes a man. You think of your sister's letter. Does it have to? Reeves looks at you with those dark green eyes. Yes and no. You won't be the same, that's certain. Can't unsee what you've seen, can't undo what you've done. He pauses, but you choose what to carry forward, what to leave behind. The conversation stays with you as you settle onto your bedroll later. Above, stars peek through breaks in the clouds, the same stars that shine over your family's farm, over the graves at Gettysburg, over the Confederate camps in Virginia. Sleep comes easier than it has in weeks. Real rest without the immediate threat of battle looming. Morning brings new orders. Your regiment will march east to join forces gathering near Washington, then likely push south into Virginia once more. The war's next phase is taking shape. As tents are struck and equipment packed, you notice a change in the camp's atmosphere. Men move with purpose, but without the desperate urgency of before. Veterans explain to newer recruits the best way to adjust pack straps, how to wrap feet to prevent blisters, which rations to save, and which to eat immediately. Knowledge passing down. Lessons learned. The army growing not just in size but in experience. Captain Hayes inspects your company before March, noting gaps in the ranks that will never be filled. Nearly a third of those who started at Gettysburg are gone dead, wounded, or missing. We'll be receiving replacements soon, he announces. New volunteers and conscripts. I expect you veterans to show them the ropes. Teach them what they need to know to stay alive. Veterans. The word catches you by surprise. When did you transition from green recruit to veteran? Somewhere between that first march and Gettysburg's bloody fields. It happened without your noticing. The march east begins under clear skies, a welcome change from weeks of rain. The countryside here is largely untouched by war farms still productive, towns intact, civilians going about daily business. You pass a field where a farmer drives a horse-drawn reaper through golden wheat. The peaceful scene seems from another world. The farmer waves as your column passes. You wave back, feeling a strange connection to this man, continuing his harvest while you march to war. That night, camped in a pleasant grove of oak trees, William shares a letter he received from his mother. She sent cookies, he says, unwrapping a cloth package. Probably half crumbs by now, but still. The simple oatmeal cookies, indeed partially crushed, taste better than any fancy dessert you can remember. The three of you savour them slowly, making them last. My brother sent these before Antietam, William says, surprising you with another rare mention of his fallen sibling. I didn't share them. Ate them all myself. He looks at the remaining cookie fragments. Stupid thing to regret, but I do. He wouldn't hold it against you, you offer. William smiles faintly. No, he wouldn't. He was better than me that way. To brothers, Wilkins says suddenly, raising his canteen. Those here and those gone. You touch canteens together in the gathering dusk. To brothers. The march continues for days, eventually bringing you to a camp outside Washington City. Here, the Army of the Potomac is being reorganized, reinforced, and resupplied for the coming campaign into Virginia. New recruits arrive, boys looking even younger than you were when you enlisted, alongside older men with the weathered faces of farmers and labourers. They eye the veterans with a mixture of awe and apprehension. A lanky youth named Collins is assigned to your tent. He can't be more than 16, with a wispy attempt at a moustache and hands too big for his wrists. Is it true you fought at Gettysburg? He asks, eyes wide. You nod, continuing to clean your rifle task that's become almost meditative. What was it like? The question all new recruits ask, the one impossible to answer truthfully. You consider what to say. The boy deserves some preparation for what's coming, but not enough to terrify him into paralysis. Loud, you finally reply. Confusing, not like the newspaper stories. You pause. Stay close to your company. Listen to the veterans. Don't try to be a hero. Collins nods seriously, absorbing this wisdom like gospel. And keep your feet dry, Wilkins adds from across the tent. Trench foot'll kill you quicker than any Reb bullet. You smile at this typical Wilkins practical advice. He's right though. The unglamorous realities of soldiering foot care, keeping your powder dry, knowing how to cook salt pork without burning it to leather, these things matter as much as marksmanship or courage. Washington brings other novelties, real food from sutlers' wagons, proper mail service, even occasional passes to visit the city. You send letters home with freshly purchased paper and ink, describing Gettysburg in carefully edited terms that won't worry your parents. One evening, you, William, and Wilkins use day passes to visit Washington. The capital is a strange mix of wartime urgency and civilian normality. Government buildings buzz with activity. Military couriers gallop through streets. Wounded soldiers on crutches mix with fashionably dressed ladies and businessmen in suits. You eat in an actual restaurant your first proper meal in months. Beefsteak, potatoes, fresh bread with butter, coffee that doesn't taste of chicory. The luxury of it almost overwhelms you. Think we'll remember how to be normal when this is over? Wilkins asks, cutting into his steak with unaccustomed delicacy. The question gives you pause. Will civilian life ever feel natural again after what you've experienced? Will you fit back into the world of planting and harvest, church socials and barn raisings? We'll learn, William says with that quiet certainty that's become his hallmark. People adapt. After dinner, you walk through the city as darkness falls. Gas lamps illuminate the streets, music drifts from taverns and dance halls. For a few hours, you're just three young men enjoying an evening, not soldiers preparing for the next battle. The illusion shatters when you pass a military hospital. Even from outside, the sounds of suffering carry moans, occasional screams, orderlies calling for assistance. A surgeon stands smoking on the steps, his apron dark with old bloodstains. You walk past quickly, but the reminder follows. The war continues despite this brief respite. Soon enough, you'll march south again, back into Virginia's killing fields. That night, back in camp, you lie awake listening to the sounds around you. Collins breathing steadily in his bedroll, already asleep with the gift of youth. William turning occasionally, perhaps troubled by dreams. Distant laughter from another tent, a sentry's footsteps. Tomorrow brings drill and preparation. The day after, perhaps orders to march, the war stretching ahead like a long road disappearing into fog. But tonight, you're safe, surrounded by friends who have become brothers. Your belly full, your body resting on relatively soft ground, stars visible through the tent flap, small comforts in a world gone mad. You hold them close, knowing their rarity, their worth. Sleep comes gently, carrying you away from war's harsh realities toward dreams of home, of fishing in the creek where your sister saw you standing, of wheat fields ripening under summer sun, of a world where peace isn't just a distant hope but daily reality. And as consciousness fades, a thought surfaces. Whatever comes next, you'll face it with these men beside you. Together you've survived Gettysburg. The crucible has forged something unbreakable between you. Brothers, not by birth, but by something perhaps stronger choice. The choice to stand together when it would be easier to break, to find humanity in war's inhumanity, to carry each other when strength fails. This, at least, is worth holding on to. The Virginia campaign begins in early autumn. Your regiment marches south across familiar terrain, the same roads you travelled the previous year, now worn deeper by the constant passage of armies. The war has etched itself into the landscape just as it has etched itself into the men who fight it. The easy camaraderie of Washington fades with each mile. Veterans grow quieter, more focused. New recruits like Collins watch and learn, their initial enthusiasm tempered by the veterans' solemnity. They'll understand soon enough, William says, as you observe Collins joking with other new recruits. No point spoiling it for them now. The first engagement comes near a small river crossing in northern Virginia, a brief, sharp fight against Confederate cavalry trying to delay your advance. Nothing like Gettysburg's massive confrontation, but deadly enough. Collins freezes the first time bullets fly. You grab him by the shoulder, force him down behind cover. Load, you tell him firmly. Then aim, then fire, just like in drill. The simplicity of the instruction breaks through his panic. He nods, fumbling a cartridge from his box with shaking hands. By the fight's end, he's functioning, if not smoothly, at least effectively. Thanks, he says afterward, embarrassed. Don't know what happened to me. Happened to all of us, you assure him, remembering your own first time under fire. Gets easier, though perhaps easier isn't the right word. More familiar might be better. The fear never truly leaves. You just learn to function despite it. The campaign continues through September and October, a series of maneuvers and minor engagements as the Union Army probes for weakness in Confederate defenses. Unlike the desperate days following Gettysburg, this is methodical, strategic warfare, grinding the enemy down through persistent pressure rather than dramatic charges. The changing season brings new challenges. Autumn rains turn roads to mud again. Nights grow colder, dew soaking bedrolls by morning. The summer's abundance gives way to harder foraging as fields are harvested or burned. During one cold, wet March, Wilkins develops a cough that doesn't improve with rest. By evening, he's feverish, struggling to keep pace. Just need to sleep it off, he insists, though his face is flushed and his breathing laboured. Captain Hayes, passing by during evening inspection, notices immediately. "Hospital tent," he orders, now private. Wilkins starts to protest, but is overcome by a coughing fit so violent he nearly falls. You and William help him to the regimental hospital, a large tent near the centre of camp where the surgeon has established his practice. The tent is already crowded with similar cases: pneumonia, bronchitis, various fevers. The mortality from disease still outpaces battlefield deaths, though improved camp hygiene has helped somewhat. The surgeon examines Wilkins briefly. Pneumonia likely. Keep him warm, plenty of fluids. He hands you a small bottle of dark liquid. Laudanum for the cough, just a few drops every 4 hours. You and William take turns sitting with Wilkins through the night, forcing water and broth between coughing spells, administering the laudanum that brings brief respite from the racking cough. "If I die from a damn cold after surviving Gettysburg, I'm going to be really annoyed," Wilkins manages between coughs, his attempt at humour undermined by the fear in his eyes. "You're not dying," William says firmly. "We didn't carry you this far to lose you to a cough." By morning, Wilkins' fever has worsened. The surgeon returns, listens to his chest and frowns. He needs to go to the general hospital, can't treat this properly here in the field. An ambulance wagon takes Wilkins and other serious cases to a larger hospital established in a nearby town. You watch it leave with a hollow feeling. So many who go to those hospitals never return to their units. "He'll be all right," William says, though he sounds uncertain. Wilkins is too stubborn to die. The march continues without him. War doesn't pause for personal concern or grief. The regiment pushes further south, eventually joining the main Union army near Rappahannock Station. Here, a more significant battle unfolds, Union forces launching a surprise attack on Confederate defensive positions. Your regiment is part of the main assault, charging across open ground toward enemy trenches under heavy fire. The familiar rhythm returns, loading, firing, advancing by rushes, the chaos and noise of battle enveloping everything. But something is different this time. You move through the actions with a detachment that wasn't there before. Your fear exists but seems distant, observed rather than experienced. Is this what becoming a veteran truly means? This strange separation between what you feel and what you do? The assault succeeds. Confederate forces retreat across the river, leaving behind hundreds of prisoners and several artillery pieces. A clear victory, though with the customary cost in dead and wounded. Among the wounded is Collins, a bullet through his left arm. Painful, but not life-threatening. You help him to the field hospital, where surgeons are already at work on more serious cases. "Will they take it off?" Collins asks, staring at his bloody sleeve with terror. You shake your head. "Clean wound through and through. They'll patch you up." You don't add that he's lucky that soldiers pray for exactly this kind of wound when they must be hit at all. Serious enough for a ticket away from the front, but not permanently disabling. As winter approaches, the campaign winds down. Both armies settle into semi-permanent camps along the Rapidan River close, enough to observe each other's movements but separated by the natural barrier and mutual exhaustion. Your regiment establishes winter quarters, a process you've now experienced enough to approach with efficiency. Small log huts rise along the company streets, each housing 4 to 6 men. Fireplaces of stone and mud provide warmth. Beds are built of pine boughs covered with blankets. Compared to summer tenting or marching, it's almost comfortable. William and 2 other veterans from your company share your hut. Collins is still at the hospital, and Wilkins remains a question mark. No word has come from the general hospital, no letter. In the army's vast bureaucracy, men can disappear from their units and never be properly accounted for. "We should write to his family," William suggests one evening as you sit by the fire, "just in case." The thought is painful, but he's right. You volunteer to draft the letter, knowing Wilkins mentioned a mother and sister in Philadelphia. You write carefully, explaining his illness, expressing hope for his recovery, but acknowledging the uncertainty. It feels terribly inadequate. Days settle into the routine of winter camp. Picket duty along the river, gathering firewood, improving huts with whatever materials can be scrounged, drill when weather permits. The war continues, but at winter's slower pace. Christmas approaches with little fanfare in camp. There are no decorations, no feasts being prepared, but the mood lightens somewhat as packages begin arriving from home cookies, warm socks, small luxuries sent by families trying to reach across the distance. You receive a box from your mother woolen mittens she knitted, a fruitcake dense enough to survive the journey, and a letter full of news from home. Your father has built a new barn, your sister's youngest has started school. The apple trees produced well this fall. Normal life continuing in your absence. There's comfort in knowing home still exists, unchanged by what you've experienced. A place where war is still a distant thing happening to other people. On Christmas Eve, something unexpected happens. Word passes through camp that a truce has been arranged along the picket lines, not officially, but by mutual agreement of the common soldiers on both sides of the river. You're assigned picket duty that night and witness it firsthand. Confederate soldiers on the opposite bank call across the water, their voices carrying in the still, cold air. "Hey, Yank, Merry Christmas." "Same to you, Reb." Small fires burn on both sides of the river, illuminating men who yesterday would have shot at each other without hesitation. Tonight they exchange shouted greetings, jokes, even songs. Someone on the Union side has a fiddle. A Confederate soldier produces a harmonica. They play "Home, Sweet Home" together, the music drifting across the water. For a few hours, the war pauses. Men remember they're human beings first, soldiers second. Tomorrow they'll resume trying to kill each other, but tonight allows a glimpse of what peace might feel like. You stand your watch, rifle leaned against a tree, warming your hands at the small fire. Across the river, a Confederate soldier about your age raises a cup in salute. You return the gesture with your canteen. Under different circumstances, you might have been friends. The thought is both comforting and disturbing. The new year of 1864 arrives cold and clear. With it comes unexpected news, a letter from a hospital in Washington. "Got shot of the fever," Wilkins writes in shaky handwriting. "Doctors say I'm lucky to be alive. Lung damage means no more frontline service for me. They're putting me on light duty in the Quartermaster Corps once I'm stronger, counting beans instead of bullets." Relief floods through you as you share the letter with William. Wilkins alive, if not entirely well, no longer in danger from battle, though clearly still recovering from his brush with death. "Told you he was too stubborn to die," William says with a smile. You write back immediately, including news of the regiment, of Colin's wound, of the Christmas truce along the Rapidan. Normal things that now seem precious because they can be shared. Winter deepens. Snow blankets the camps on both sides of the river, creating a strange beauty that temporarily masks war's ugliness. In these quieter days, you find yourself reflecting more on how you've changed since that first march nearly a year ago. The naive farm boy is gone, replaced by someone harder to define. Not just a soldier, though you've become proficient at war's grim tasks, but something more complex. You've seen humanity at its worst and its best, sometimes in the same moment. You've learned what you can endure, what you can do when necessary. These thoughts arise during long night watches or quiet evenings by the hut's fire. William seems to understand without you having to articulate it. He's walking the same path, carrying similar burdens, asking himself the same questions. "Sometimes I wonder if we'll fit back home when this is over," you admit one night. William stokes the fire thoughtfully. "We'll be different," he acknowledges, "but home will be waiting. We'll find our way." His quiet certainty remains a cornerstone of your friendship. While Wilkins brought humour and energy to your trio, William has always provided this steady centre, this unshakable belief that there's purpose even in suffering. February brings news that changes the war's direction. President Lincoln has appointed General Grant as commander of all Union armies. The hero of Vicksburg will now direct the entire Northern war effort. The impact is felt even in winter quarters. More supplies arrive, training intensifies, everyone senses a new purpose, a gathering momentum. Grant doesn't believe in dancing around, says Captain Hayes during a company briefing. When spring comes, we hit them with everything we have, everywhere at once. No more retreating after a battle. We keep pushing until it's over. The prospect of such relentless warfare brings mixed emotions. Hope that the end might finally be in sight, dread at what achieving that end will cost. Spring arrives early in Virginia. By March, the first green appears along the riverbanks. Birds return, filling morning air with song that seems incongruous against the backdrop of armed camps. With spring comes the offensive everyone has anticipated. Grant moves the Army of the Potomac across the Rapidan in early May, pushing into an area of second-growth forest and tangled underbrush known locally as the Wilderness. The Battle of the Wilderness unfolds unlike any you've experienced. Fighting in dense woods means limited visibility, confused movements, danger of friendly fire. The worst horror comes when artillery shells ignite the dry underbrush. Fires spread rapidly, trapping wounded men who cannot move. Their screams haunt those who hear them. Your regiment is in the thick of it, advancing, retreating, holding ground, sometimes fighting Confederate troops you can barely see through the smoke and vegetation. At one point you find yourself separated from your company, temporarily lost in the chaotic battlefield. Disoriented, you pick a direction and move carefully, listening for familiar voices. Instead, you stumble upon a clearing where a Confederate soldier sits propped against a tree, badly wounded. He raises a pistol weakly as you appear. You bring your rifle up instinctively. For a moment you face each other, fingers on triggers. Then recognition dawns. Not of the individual, but the situation. Another human being, someone's son trapped in the same nightmare as you. You lower your rifle slightly. After a hesitation, he lowers his pistol. "Water?" he asks, voice raspy from smoke and thirst. You approach cautiously, then kneel to offer your canteen. He drinks gratefully, revealing a neck wound that's been roughly bandaged but still seeps blood. "Thanks, Yank." He hands back the canteen. "Don't suppose you'd point me toward our lines before you go?" You hesitate, then gesture south. "That way, I think. Maybe half a mile." He nods, attempting to rise, but failing. "Might just wait here a while." You both know he'll likely die if not found soon. The knowledge hangs between you. "I'll tell your stretcher-bearers where to find you," you say finally, "if I run into them." A nod of acknowledgement. Nothing more needs saying. You continue through the burning woods, eventually finding your way back to Union lines. True to your word, you tell a Confederate prisoner being escorted rearward about the wounded man's location. Whether he was saved, you'll never know. Just one small moment of humanity in a battle characterized by its absence. The fighting continues for days, moving southeast from the Wilderness to Spotsylvania Courthouse. Grant implements his new strategy even after bloody repulses. The Union Army doesn't retreat but sidesteps, continuing to press Lee's forces. The cost is staggering. Thousands fall daily. Ambulance wagons form endless processions to the rear. Field hospitals overflow. Yet the army continues advancing, slowly pushing the Confederates back toward Richmond. In late May, your regiment participates in a massive frontal assault at Cold Harbor. The attack is a disaster. Thousands of Union soldiers fall in minutes against well-entrenched Confederate positions. William goes down during the charge, a bullet striking his thigh. You and another soldier drag him behind a small rise, providing minimal cover from continuing fire. "How bad?" he asks through gritted teeth. You cut away his trouser leg to examine the wound. The bullet has passed through the fleshy part of his thigh, missing bone and major blood vessels. Serious, but not immediately life-threatening. "You'll live," you tell him, using his own belt as a tourniquet. Might even keep you out of action long enough for this damn war to end. When stretcher bearers arrive, William grips your hand. "Don't do anything stupid while I'm gone," he says. "I expect to see you after." "Count on it," you promise. As they carry him away, a strange emptiness settles over you. First Wilkins, now William. The trio that formed at the war's beginning has been reduced to just you. The summer campaign grinds on. Grant continues pushing Lee's army back, eventually crossing the James River and approaching Petersburg, a critical rail junction south of Richmond. Here, the mobile war transforms into siege warfare. Trenches extend for miles. Artillery duels replace infantry charges. Progress is measured in yards, not miles. You find yourself assigned as acting sergeant following casualties among non-commissioned officers. The responsibility sits uneasily at first, making decisions that affect others' lives, but you grow into the role, teaching new recruits, maintaining discipline, looking out for your squad's welfare. One hot July afternoon, Captain Hayes summons you to company headquarters, a slightly larger tent distinguished mainly by a camp table serving as a desk. "Letter for you, Fletcher," he says, holding out an official-looking envelope. "From Washington. The contents are unexpected orders transferring you to a new assignment. You've been recommended for officer training. If you accept, you'll report to a school established in Philadelphia to prepare sergeants for commissioning as lieutenants." "It's a good opportunity," Hayes says, noting your surprise. "You've got the makings of an officer. The men respect you." You ask for time to consider, though the decision feels already made. The war has changed course no longer, just enduring until it's over, but committing to seeing it through, perhaps even leading others. That night, you write letters to William, recovering in a Washington hospital, to Wilkins, now working in the Quartermaster Corps, to your family, explaining your decision to remain in service rather than coming home when your enlistment ends. The war has become, in some strange way, a responsibility you cannot set down. Not yet. Your replacement arrives before your departure, a sergeant from another company being consolidated with yours due to casualties. You brief him on the men, their strengths and quirks, the little details that might keep them alive. Collins is a good soldier but needs confidence. Jackson knows more than he lets on listen to him when he speaks up. Simmons makes the best coffee in the regiment, worth sharing your sugar ration. The sergeant nods, understanding the true currency of leadership, knowing your men as individuals, not just as rifles in a line. Your departure from the Petersburg trenches comes without ceremony. A handshake from Captain Hayes, good wishes from the men of your squad, then the long journey north, first by wagon to City Point, then by steamship to Washington, finally by train to Philadelphia. The contrast between frontline conditions and the relatively normal life of Philadelphia is jarring. People go about their business, shops are open, children play in parks. The war exists here only in newspaper headlines and the occasional sight of wounded veterans. Officer training is intensive 8 weeks of tactics, military law, leadership principles, practical exercises. You throw yourself into it, determined to learn everything that might help keep men alive in your care. During a weekend liberty, you visit Wilkins at the Quartermaster Depot where he works. His face lights up at the sight of you, though you're shocked by his appearance gaunt, with a persistent cough that interrupts his speech. "Look at you," he wheezes, taking in your new uniform. "Lieutenant Fletcher, who'd have thought it?" You spend the day together, sharing memories of earlier campaigns, news of mutual acquaintances. He's received letters from William, who expects to recover fully, though he walks with a pronounced limp. "We made it," Wilkins says as evening approaches. "The 3 of us. Different ways, but we made it." You nod, understanding what he means. Surviving isn't just about breathing. It's about carrying something forward, finding purpose in what you've endured. The war enters its final phases as you complete training. Grant maintains pressure at Petersburg. Sherman captures Atlanta, then begins his march to the sea. Confederate territory shrinks month by month. You receive your commission in late 1864 and orders to join a new regiment being formed of veterans and fresh recruits. As a second lieutenant, you command a platoon 40 men whose lives now partly depend on your decisions. The responsibility weighs heavily, but you find you're prepared for it. All you've experienced from those first terrified moments at your first battle through Gettysburg's crucible to Petersburg's grinding siege has built toward this. Winter passes in training and preparation. By spring 1865, everyone senses the war's approaching end. Confederate desertion rates soar. Supplies dwindle in Southern territory. The vice tightens. In April, news arrives that sends waves of disbelief and then jubilation through Union camps. Petersburg's defenses have broken. Richmond has fallen. Lee's army is retreating west, pursued by Grant. Your regiment prepares to join the final push, but before you can move out, even more momentous news arrives. Lee has surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. The Army of Northern Virginia, the Confederacy's most formidable force, exists no more. The war is effectively over. The celebrations that follow are strangely subdued. Joy, yes, but mixed with exhaustion, with grief for those who didn't live to see this day, with uncertainty about what comes next. For you, the path is clearer than for some. The army will need officers during Reconstruction and occupation. Your commission offers stability, purpose, a way to help heal what war has broken. In May 1865, before your regiment heads south for occupation duty, you receive leave to visit home. The journey feels dreamlike, retracing in reverse the path that took you to war nearly 2 years earlier. The farm appears as you crest the final hill fields green with spring planting. The new barn your father built standing proud, smoke rising from the chimney, so ordinary, so miraculous in its unchanged state. Your mother sees you first, dropping her basket of laundry with a cry that brings your father running from the barn. They embrace you on the doorstep, tears flowing freely, words unnecessary. Home. After everything, home still exists. That night, sleeping in your childhood bed, you dream not of battles, but of simple things: fishing in the creek, helping with harvest, Sunday gatherings at church, the life that waits when uniforms are finally set aside. And it will wait, you realize. However changed you are, however long the path back to full civilian life might be, home remains a constant in a world transformed by war. Years later, long after Appomattox, you'll gather with William and Wilkins on the anniversary of Gettysburg. Older men by then, with families, with established lives. Wilkins still bearing the cough from that long-ago pneumonia. William walking with his slight limp. You with grey beginning to streak your hair. You'll stand together on that ridge where you once fought, now peaceful beneath summer sun. The stone wall still there, though the dead are long since buried, the battlefield transformed into a place of remembrance. Did you ever think we'd be here? Wilkins will ask. I mean, after. Looking back instead of wondering if we'd see tomorrow. William did, you'll answer with a smile. He always knew we'd make it. And William, still the quiet centre of your trio, will simply nod. Not how we'd make it, he'll clarify. Just that we would. Together. Together. Through war's crucible and peace's healing. Through all that came before and all that follows. As you lie in your comfortable bed now, so far removed from hardtack and mud and the terror of battle, remember this. The human capacity for endurance is nearly limitless. We survive, we carry forward, we find our way back to peace. Sleep now, knowing that whatever hardships life brings, morning always comes again, just as it did for those long-ago soldiers who somehow found their way home from war's darkest places, carrying with them memories of both horror and grace, of suffering and brotherhood. Rest easy, you're safe, the battles are long since over, the wounds long since healed. Sleep.